It's good. I'm assuming, like me, you had a certain environment coming up that is wistful. I remember, my late auntie, who really was probably the core figure in the development of a lot of my politics, but also the aesthetics that I aspired to coming up, where I first saw that charcoal and that smell, where it takes me back to waking up on a Saturday morning in the basement after playing video games all night, knowing my auntie was like, all right, it's time to wake up. And she's waving it because we funky as hell in the basement.
The incense and oils was always pulled from, a couple of very particular, Afrocentric books.
Bookstore, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, no, 100,000%. Like the
You go out, you run into brother such and such and sister, who are you? And they like, oh, I seen you when you were so little. You getting so big. Here go a book. When you coming back to karate class.
And that's the, like it take a village, right? That's what
Right.
they say. And that's, the political education used to be inbuilt. I'm wondering where we are at with that now. You know what I'm saying? Like a lot of us that were raised in a certain generation, a certain type of environment, even, and I'll just be honest, like, especially in my younger years, like I was crazy in the streets, but the political
They weren't
lessons
that far apart.
there. Yeah, exactly. No, they weren't. They weren't. And you could, you always like when you were ready to get your hair right, you knew where to go.
Yeah. I think part of it is that I don't know if you saw my Hotep video.
Come on,
Um,
I saw the Hotep
oh,
video.
okay, just making sure, just making sure.
Look, that Hotep video is the reason why I asked for this interview,
Oh,
man. Like,
no. See, because you game recognized game.
a
Yeah.
hundred thousand percent, yeah.
Because of recording, I won't go too far into it, but there's so much
Okay.
deep lore I left out that really I think explains the disconnect. And
Okay.
this I think the simple answer is there was so much infiltration. There was even more infiltration than we realized. And it left scars that did not have a chance to heal once they killed Fred,
Yeah.
um, and everybody starts scrambling, and then they killed Bunchy on the other side of the country. That scramble was won by probably most of the least scrupulous figures in that moment. And then we have a mess. And so there's tools. I deeply value the political education foundation I got,
Yep.
but I also heard some bullshit.
Well, and because I know sociology is one of your fields, the sociology of the way that the movement broke down. And I mean, I'll just say this, to connect it to things. So I just came back from, 5 cities, 6 different events over the weekend. One of the biggest themes I was trying to put people on game is like we have to learn not just from what the Panthers did right, but also from what the Panthers did wrong. And foregrounding security, being clear about like the ethics that we carry in the space, and especially this part. Like if you look at, like for me, the spirituality has always been a crucial part of everything that I do. Really, in a lot of ways, the foundation of it is that hurt people hurt people. Unless you're actively undertaking some kind of systematic practice to recover from the trauma of empire, then you are definitely going to inscribe it on all of the institutions you build. And when you combine those two things together, like unhealed people in the space and then infiltrations in the space that are, like where people are maybe they're thinking about self-defense in terms of, carrying, but they're not thinking about how to keep their spaces safe and secure from those infiltrations in a very serious way. So between those two things, like the weaknesses within and the weaknesses without, that's how you squander, liberation opportunities. And so especially when I suddenly got dragged into electoral politics, like I'm immediately thinking about, okay, well, like I gotta fortify my 12, my six, like for real. Like we gotta have eyes in every direction. So yeah.
Yeah. I have the same thing, because I have that background in sociology. I initially glossed over a lot of radical politics while in undergrad or not in grad school. And it wasn't really until I started making content that I was challenged in a lot of ways and forced to either I hit a crossroads where it was like, look, you're gonna turn into Van Jones um before or after.
May God eternally preserve us from,
Right.
from being that
From
level of
being Van Jones.
that level
Uh,
of coon. I mean, good gracious.
but one thing I will, so not him, but one thing I still carry with me is that background in gender studies
Mm,
and recognizing that the one flaw that I'm constantly battling people on is like we can acknowledge like the failures of especially white feminism and the limitations even of intersectional feminism, or at least the ways in which those frameworks can be corrupted and utilized for
Yep.
like fruitless identity politics.
Yep.
But we can't get so lazy as to not recognize the role that gender conflict and reproduction of patriarchy played in so many failures within these radical movements as people reproduce those structures and they inevitably, forced schisms and divisions. And, and that was the main thing that for me growing up that I couldn't reconcile because I was a child of a single mom.
Yep.
And I watched my mom engage with who like did everything she could for me and worked her way up into all these spaces and was having so much success, like be like encouraged to engage in this submissive dance to entertain men that could barely hold a conversation.
That was trifling as the day is long, and we're not worthy of that kind of estimation. And I'll say this, I mean, just to put it plain, the misogyny was wild, and the misogyny was insanely destructive. And I've been going, live, at least when I haven't had campaign events, all throughout August, just kind of doing a Black August thing, like, study fast, train, fight, to try to, give people some tools and resources from the tradition. But that's one of the principal ones to like address is just the really toxic versions of Black masculinity that were allowed to reign inside the space.
Yeah.
And also, as being somebody that was raised up, predominantly by a single mom as well, and like watching, the struggle that she had, and as being, a father of, 4 Black daughters, 2 Black stepdaughters, 2 daughters, as a girl dad, I can't be about that life, man. Like, what happened to the, respect the queens? What happened to the,
right? It's the weird benevolent patriarchy stuff. It gets so deep. I don't want to do it too much because I want everybody to feel welcome, and there's certain dudes that as soon as you mention the word feminism and patriarchy, it's like they get a rash. They can't. It's like holy water on vampires.
Everybody says hit dogs holler, but the one
it always is. But
the one that I learned growing up was a stuck pig squeals.
But within that same frame, I actually did want to start on the whole masculinity bit because I often get frustrated by wanting to like touch on things, but feeling the need to do it in the most delicate, passive way because of the fragility and like the level of resistance that some dudes have.
Yeah.
But I also feel like there's a usefulness in, because I'm not anti-masculine. I'm not anti even like traditional masculine presentation. I just came from the gym, like literally, like
that's why I'm late. That's why I'm late for this. Is that I was coming in. I did my fasted cardio. My lift is later in the day, like the and I workout videos.
I love that. I love that you're posted. Like I love that. It's one part like here's some political education, like just words or whatever. And it's one part, oh yeah, I'm Jack too. So let me talk to you about George Jackson. You know what I'm saying? Like, even though so first off, I know this is a false attack on the left and progressive men, etc. Because what you find with any level analysis, you'll recognize that if you are really about any type of traditional masculinity, you'll notice that the men on the right are not that at all. Whether it's generally how they present themselves in the world with like your, I don't know, Ben Shapiro's of the world, or if it's like their capacity to manage themselves, to manage families, to be, protectors and providers.
The Jordan Peterson types, the Andrew Tate type. Yeah, I mean,
none of them uphold the frameworks they present as their axioms. But there is this bastardized image of men on the left who lack those traditional markers of masculinity. There's this kind of balancing beam where you want to present those images, but you also want to detach those images from their toxic counterparts, and also not scare off other people for whom those images are a red flag. And so, like, how are you managing that? Like,
yeah. So I mean, the first thing that I'll say is the fitness to fascist pipeline is real. They've co-opted this space with a lot of alt-right, pathways that lead people down into all kinds of fake patriarchy, right? For me, it's just misogyny. Like it's not more
That's
complicated than
real,
that.
actually. It's because there's no power, there's
There's
no
no
actual.
power, there's no
Yeah.
patriarchy in it. It's just misogyny.
Mm.
So when I first got on social media in 2020, and I should just explain for context, like I had only been doing the community work, and I'd been known in the Black community, Muslim community, and especially in the Black Muslim community for that work for a long time. But in 2020, I got on social media after the George Floyd murder because I felt like any kind of teaching that I was doing in the community, on a face-to-face basis, now needs to be made accessible to as broad an audience as possible. But because I am who I am, and I lost over 110 pounds. I used to be 330 pounds,
Oh, wow.
morbidly obese, fighting, like for my health, and family members diagnosed with diabetes. My aunt, Runette, back in Georgia, had her stomach stapled to try to, to win her fight in that struggle. And she fell asleep one night, 3 weeks after the surgery, and never woke up. For me, it was a health thing that had become a big part of my life and a big part of my routine. And I had been an athlete coming up as well. So like I was comfortable in those spaces. So because I am who I am, I posted workout videos, and I talked about the relationship between my fitness efforts and my faith and my politics, like the way that a particular kind of discipline, a particular kind of, inner jihad, like an inner struggle against yourself to find out what your limits and capabilities are and how that can translate into different domains. And also how ultimately the instrument that we use to achieve liberation is ourself. And that means our physical self as well. Like I found myself confronted by the limits of my strength and by the limits of my stamina when my health was compromised. And so there were all kinds of reasons to tether my faith, my politics, and my fitness together. So those are still, part of my process. And I'm 51 now. Last year at age 50, I hit 225 by 30 on the bench, which is like NFL combine for defensive tackles.
I think the record for defensive tackles is like 42.
Exactly. And those cats are, 315. I cranked out that set at 239 pounds, of body weight. I'm 6'3". So, and I hit a 500-pound squat last year. And so I post about those things because I do think maybe it's like, yes, leftists, but especially like Black folks, especially Black progressives, because there's a particular kind of fake Black masculinity that is not rooted in the way that my grandfather Rudolph Ware Sr. moved in the world.
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
he moved in the world with like a kind of self-assuredness and a self-confidence. And it's Southern men of a certain generation. Like they never felt like there was anything that was beyond their reach. So therefore they didn't always have to be lording power over people, and they didn't have to get all chesty because they knew who they were and they were in their own skin. And that allowed them to be like very traditionally masculine in a lot of ways without a lot of those,
It's the misogyny part. What you said earlier, like it's not patriarchy, misogyny actually makes a lot of sense. Not to just to do the Black man no patriarchy argument, because I know somebody gonna watch it and be like, see, I'm not saying that, but like the misogyny part is such a key ingredient because there's often a lot of conflict around reflecting on the elder men that raised us, because you do recognize there were flaws and limitations because of patriarchy and their inability, that like of a time where aspiring to patriarchy was noble and the community supported in a lot of ways. And so a couple of us I got a grandfather that had 2 or 3 families, you know what I'm saying? And like so does my wife. And like, that was like a thing you did. If you were a Black man of means, you could do that. Right. Yep. But even within that really problematic, flawed framework, I think there is a unique element, like the misogyny part. I'm not gonna say it's new, but the way it's manufactured now, when I think about the Manosphere space and a lot of these online activities from certain Black men, the lack of power. I don't know. I'm probably gonna have to edit around this because I'm trying.
No, don't edit around it because I think I'm picking up what you're putting down, because I've spoken about this at like a slightly different angle, which is that what's actually taking place in that manosphere space, to refer to what you said before, it's not just that they're not actually living the values that they're representing. It's actually that they are disempowering their audiences. Those boys that get pulled into that manosphere environment, they're the bag, they're the mark. And that is a profoundly like disempowering position that they end up in. They think that they're becoming alphas, but they are the betaist of betas, in that political economy. And so that's why I think that the hatred of women becomes so acute, and it ends up so isolating for them, right? They're being this thing, and they just keep getting further and further away from being able to ever achieve any of this fictional benefits that this fake patriarchy that they're being presented with, was supposed to promise them. And so the hatred becomes deep, the contempt becomes overpowering, because it's true that there was a kernel of misogyny in even the best versions of kind of Black paternalism, right?
Right. Yeah, that's a good, I like that.
But it wasn't what we see today, which is this kind of outright hatred and contempt.
Right. It's like the trolling for it is what I see the most. Like, because it becomes one of the things I've talked about in a couple of minutes of videos is that you'll notice that it's certain types of dudes that get so deep in, it becomes this weird cycle. And then we get to the next thing I want to talk about is like this right here, what we're doing, which is controlled by these algorithms. Algorithms learn, hey, if I show this dude a pretty woman smiling, it's gonna piss him off. Like if I show him a pretty woman, if I show him a woman being like, I'm about to go to the club and she looks good and she's smiling, he's gonna leave 35 angry misogynistic comments in her comment section. And he's gonna stay engaged for the rest of the day, if not the rest of the week. And so I'm gonna sell more ad space, yada 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 yada. And then, like, after he swipes up, it's going to be somebody being like, Black women, like.
Before you know it, he will be like one of them hardcore.
Hardcore. One of the videos I'm most proud of, I did some unprofessional research. I do have a background in academia, which is why, like, I tried to very much say to the people, this is not academic standard research. However, I found in this little research that, like, the younger the men are, the longer they stay there, because they don't have any other experiences to counteract what they're seeing online.
Yeah. So they're unconsummated cultural products to begin with, which is true for these young, boys and men across the board, right? I mean, and I use the academic term unconsummated cultural product, but what I mean is that they're not done yet. They need more time in the oven, like they're not cooked. And so because of that, they encounter this at a particular, phase in their development, and it stunts, the overall development. And then for our community, especially, for Black folks, like when you then, compound that with the way that hip hop music is presented, not even hip hop, we'll call it rap because it's not hip hop anymore. A lot of it.
Yeah, I'm in the middle of some shit now about that.
But that's just all to say that then, we got our young men in the community with all of these negatives. So that's basically the short reason why it's like, yeah, I mean, I played baseball, basketball, and football growing up. I had a baseball scholarship. I still lift heavy. I conform to a lot of conventional, definitions of masculinity, but I also understand that there's more than one way to be a man, and there's more than one way to be a good man. When I post fitness content, I'm like, look, it's not about achieving a particular kind of aesthetic. Don't get me wrong. Like, everybody wants to look nice, but what it really is about is finding what health and strength looks like and feels like for you, so that you can become the most powerful instrument, and the most powerful instrument, not just in a physical sense, but also to because whatever your disability status, your gender, your age, or whatever, there's activities that you can undertake to cultivate a stronger version of you. And that, for me, is what it's all about. And that is a message that for sure connects to that unhealed people in the political space, right? Yeah. For some people, it might be yoga. For some people, it might be, taekwondo. For me, it's lifting, and swimming, whatever it is, you know what I'm saying? Like, but find that place, where your inner being and outer being are getting connected, where you're, finding joy again, where you're feeling healthy and strong again.
Feeling confident, feeling good. I mean, just literally the mental health benefits of movement and like releasing endorphins. Yeah, definitely. I want to switch it up a little bit, get into the actual politics.
Yeah.
I didn't give you a chance to introduce yourself. Look, we're going to cut here and let you introduce yourself and like particular things you're jumping in. I don't know where I'm gonna put it. I might just leave it like this. We'll see, because you're getting.
I trust your instincts, man. I watch the show, so I trust you.
Well, this is going on the podcast channel. Got to see. I don't know. I'm reworking because all this shit, doing this professionally, this paying my bills is requires constant change. The whole conversation. But you're running for governor of California.
Yep.
You're a former vice presidential candidate.
Right.
So let's start with, I think the thing that I think is most valuable for chunks of my audience.
Okay.
Which is, why is Gavin Newsom trash? Because so I don't call myself a radical just to keep certain people off my back, because they protect that word like a fraternity protects their letters, and I'm in a fraternity. But I know where I stand, but I also know where my limitations are. I hear people being like, Gavin Newsom will win. I'm telling them, like, do y'all know what y'all are asking for?
This is an excellent point of entry. So, I mean, the first thing is that he's no longer, at least not for the moment, he's not going to be California's problem no more. He's the nation's problem, because he's termed out as governor, and you can see him lining up his presidential run for 2028. The reason why he's trash, I guess I'll go back to Malcolm for this, because Malcolm was my introduction into my personal faith tradition. Like I converted when I was 15, when I read the autobiography of Malcolm X, and I read it cover to cover in one night, could not put it down, got an English translation of the Quran from my public school library the next day, read that the next night, and I took my Shahada by the end of the week. Like that was the beginning of me taking on Islam, but it was also my induction into the Black liberation tradition. And it was what allowed me to make sense of a lot of the pain and a lot of the street running and a lot of the difficulty that I've seen at different places. So I always go back to Malcolm, and we'll go back to Malcolm for Gavin, for Lil Gavin as well. Malcolm said in 1964, the white liberal is the most dangerous thing in the Western Hemisphere. And when Malcolm said that, white conservatives were hanging Negroes from trees. White conservatives were turning dogs and fire hoses on Black protesters. White conservatives were putting bullets in the brains of white voting rights activists and burying them in shallow graves alongside Mississippi roads. And Malcolm said what he said. And he said what he said because that white liberal, he said the white liberal's a fox. It bares its teeth. You think that it's smiling at you, but you are on the menu. The white conservative is a wolf. When it bares its teeth, it's into a vicious snarl that leaves the Negro with no illusion as to where he stands. Malcolm's position was that an open enemy is less dangerous to you than a hidden enemy. What's the OJ's joint? Smile in your faces all the time.
I want to take you.
Smiling in your face all the time. I want to take your place.
Or smile in my face behind my back. They talk trash, right? That's the EMD version of it, right?
Right.
It's the same thing. So they have been playing in our faces, for 60 years, this Democrat establishment. And Malcolm said it's also in 64 in the Ballad of the Bullet. He said to Black folks, he said, you put them first and they put you last. And that makes you a chump. That makes you a political chump. Those were his exact words. And so I'm just tired of our people being chumped. And now that our people is so much bigger than just the Black community, right? The Latino community is finding this out. The Muslim American community found this out in the 2024 presidential election cycle because they voted for us. They voted for the Steinway ticket. 53% of American Muslims opted off of the duopoly plantation altogether and voted green. And the reason is that what Malcolm said of the Black community in 64 is true of all of us now. We are caught between two predators, two predatory parties, one blue, one red, that differ only in the modality of the hunt. So what makes Gavin trash is that he represents that old money aristocracy. Like his daddy was a lawyer for the Gettys, you know what I'm saying? Like, and whereas, so if I'm talking about homelessness alleviation and poverty alleviation, listen, I'll be honest about the fact that my father, was on the streets of DC for 20 years of his life, battling homelessness, mental health issues, addiction. Me and my brother were getting him apartments at different points in time to just try to get him back on his feet. That's not an abstract problem for me. That, when the reason why Malcolm's story resonated with me so much is that my father was a locksmith with a grade education who hustled to make ends meet. My mom was a 15-year-old girl pregnant with me, and we never lived at the same street address for a calendar year until I was 9 years old. And so that class position where certain kind of white liberal, and even now the worst ones are those black liberals, those black imperialists, the Kamalas of the world and the Obama world, right? Is that they play act like they're about upliftment or liberation, but the reality is that they are just a concealed enemy. They hunt by guile rather than just by sheer force.
What is the genuine role of the third party going forward? Like, so I will admit, and I hope you don't click off, that I voted for Kamala Harris this past election here in Georgia because I thought it meant something.
I'm not going to hold it against you, but
I appreciate that.
But I'm going to explain why it's a wasted vote in a minute. But go ahead.
I know it's a waste of vote in general. Yeah. But what I also know is that I don't think I'd have done it in any other election. I don't plan on voting for Democrats going forward, especially if Gavin Newsom is the fucking option. Good Lord. Because it's basically just
but you know
Trump.
they're gonna run AOC Pelosi, with them. They're gonna run Alexandria with them.
Do you think they're gonna run Gavin AOC?
Yeah,
Ooh, that's sneaky. I don't. Well, no, AOC's even more compromised than people realize, in my opinion.
That's why she's been compromising, is because she's got her.
They gave her a lane. Interesting. We'll hold on for that for a second.
Yeah. Keep going.
So, but what I've been wanting to do, like after going into it, I thought Kamala was going to win. Number one, and I knew that, man, the black liberal problem is way worse than I realized as the election was going on. Yeah. And I was preparing for like not warfare, but like truly like, okay, how am I positioning my role in the attention economy to re-educate black liberals, right? And that's what I was preparing for. I got scripts I had to table because it's like, the chick lost. I can't even use this no more. I'll put it somewhere. And then when she lost, I was like, oh, okay. All right, we got a whole different game plan, but not really. And so what I think I've been doing is like I talked to Maurice Mitchell from the Working Families Party. Anyway, my point is that I'm trying to be like, okay, I don't know who the winner is, but we about to somebody from outside of the duopoly is going to have the best chance ever, not even just in 2028, but like literally next year for tons of local seats, and like possibly in a situation where we won't be able to turn back because it'll have that much more momentum.
We can break the duopoly now. Yeah.
It's so like so from your perspective as a person who's in that third party activity, who's been doing community action, and who's also participating in the attention economy, that's the highest unrealized potential, I think. Yeah. Is that we've galvanized a framework here. What do you see? What do you think should be happening? What should we be preparing for, et cetera?
So the first thing that I'll say, just to frame it, is that the moment has never been better for this kind of independent political intervention. The polling says it, 63% of registered voters say in response to a question that's both parties do such a, quote, poor job that we need a third party, 63% say yes. At number 70% when it's independents that are polled, it's 53% when it's registered Democrats and 48% when it's registered Republicans. So even Democrats know Gavin Newsom is trash. And especially inside the state of California, where we've been living with these Democrat, super majorities, and they've been as bad as the Republicans have been, we all extra know that they're trash. So we know that the moment is right for third party movement for sure. The problem structurally with DSA or with Working Families Party is that they have served traditionally as secondary ballot lines for the Democrats themselves. So whenever somebody like Zoran rises to the top, then because they're running with that D next to their name, then the corporate wing of the party either breaks them or buys them out. So you've seen that happen with the Jamal Bowmans of the world, with the Cori Bushes of the world. When you actually challenge the power and the money in the party breaks you, and that's the end of you. So this is the reason why it has to be outside of the duopoly structure, because the great Pan-Africanist and revolutionary Julius Nyerere maybe said it best. He said, first president of Tanzania, he said, of course, the United States is a single party state, but with classic American extravagance, they have two of them. And if you understand that teams blue and red are not really on opposite sides, they are two different factions inside the same ruling class, right? That today's Democrat Party is so far to the right of Ronald Reagan that it doesn't even have a reasonable claim on being a liberal party. Like Black liberals now would be conservatives in the environment of, you know, the 1980s. Like Kamala was to the right of Reagan on everything.
Yeah.
And was still somehow framed as a Black liberal.
As a communist, in fact.
What's the man? So then let's take it back to Malcolm, right? Malcolm also in 1964 said that I'm going to go to this is the Ballad of the Bullet. He delivered like 2-3 different versions of it. In one of them, he said, we're going to knock on every door in Harlem. He said, we're going to knock on every Black door and we're going to register every face behind every Black door. Not as a Democrat, not as a Republican, but as an independent. And the reason is that Malcolm understood that there was no path forward inside the structures that they were established, that we needed to be leveraging power outside of the system. So the argument for the Green Party, and the only reason why I accepted the invitation to run as the vice presidential candidate for the Green Party is that when I asked Dr. Jill Stein, and you talked about the influencer economy and that piece of it, that's how I got the invitation. I interviewed Jill on my IG Live because the Palestinian activists and the Black radicals that I knew were supporting Jill. And so I interviewed her. 24 hours later, she asked, her team got on a Zoom with 12 of them on the team, and they asked me if I would consider running as the VP. But what happened in that conversation is I asked her, well, what's the stand on reparations? She said they behave as though it's incalculable, but it's been calculated many times. It's between 10 and 14 trillion that's owed, and I'm in favor of cash payments. And so
that's a real answer. And if you don't agree with that, that's an actual answer.
And it's a whole last bar as an answer, whether you agree with it or not. You know,
right.
I asked her about, I said, I know where you stand on Palestine, but what's your overall view for American foreign policy? She said, the goal of our American foreign policy is to dismantle the American empire. And I said, yeah, you better hurry up and do it quick too, before somebody do it for you. Because if you divest from all the money that you're squandering on military adventurism and invest that in infrastructure, your republic might just survive the collapse of its empire, because the collapse of its empire is going to happen anyway. So all of that's just to say is that what I realized is that the Green Party already had this, that was standing on reparations, was standing on anti-imperialism. It checked all of the boxes with respect to all of the radical and revolutionary politics. The problem in the party was that while it had the best platform for Black liberation, it wasn't yet a Black People's Party. While it had the best platform to protect immigrant rights and for Latino communities, it wasn't yet a Latino party. And that's because from a demographic standpoint, it had been dominated by, you know, aging white environmentalists and aging white leftists. But what happened, you know, when I joined the campaign, and I'll just be blunt about this, like we went from polling 10% in the Muslim community to winning the election outright. We went from them raising $1 million in the 10 months of the campaign before I joined to raising $2.5 million in the 10 weeks that I was on the campaign. And part of the reason for that was that I was able to engage and activate those networks in the Black community and in the Muslim community, and essentially say, listen, this might not have been the weapon that we would have designed, but this weapon that has electoral access, it stands on all of the right pieces. It's not being funded by either of those corporate parties, right? And it can't be co-opted by either of those corporate parties. And by putting I said, listen, when they made me that offer, I said, y'all need to run tape on me, because
are you sure?
Because I am not going to pull any punches, and I'm never going to be anybody other than who I am, which means that you are bringing a whole ass Muslim revolutionary onto the top of the ticket, and that is going to have implications for the shape of the party. They were like, we know that's what this party needs. And so what we've seen, and that's why I'm running in 2026. Yes, we have an incredible chance to win, and you know, we can talk about the logistics of that and how the campaign functions and all of that. But it's also an opportunity to build the infrastructure inside community. That's why I'm up and down the state. That's why I was in Oakland. That's why I was in San Diego, LA, Camarillo this past weekend, because the energy is there, not for a bunch of people, not just like the disaffected Democrats and the Republicans that would love to vote for somebody that wasn't an imperialist, because a lot of them have more of an isolationist tendency even than
Right. Didn't even realize that the irony is that the Republicans may never get their party back from the Christian slash
They never
techno
will.
fascists that they've empowered over the last. It's really funny when you realize a funny thing. Oh man, it's maybe a video idea. Because when you said like that quote from the Tanzanian president,
Julius Nyerere, yep.
yeah, that both parties in the last in our lifetime, in the last 30 years ish,
Yep.
have converged to plutocratic rule.
100%.
And it's just which plutocrats are in charge first. I saw somebody say something. The reason why America won't ever have a revolution is because revolutions tend to happen when there's at least elites on both sides against each other, and our elites are lock and step. They're
on
just
they're on the
they're on
same
the same page. They're worried about the aesthetics.
And the theatrics of power differ for them, you know. So to me, when you said about 30 years, I think that's right. I mean, the first election that I voted in, and one of the two times that the Democrats, you know, got me, and we'll come back to Kamala in a minute. But they got me with Bill Clinton. I was 18. I was voting for the first time, and he was running on campaign finance reform. So even though I was already a radical in many ways, I thought if we can get the money out of politics, that this is a positive move forward. But what Clinton found out was that he could fundraise even better than the corporate party of the time, which was the Republicans. Exactly. And so what did we see? Clinton was an incredibly effective Republican president. And the policies, yeah, it was Reagan and it was Iran-Contra. They flooded the streets with the crack. They made the crack epidemic, but it was Bill Clinton and Joe Biden that did the crime bill.
Right.
They were the ones that tore our communities apart to where they couldn't be put back together and profit maximize the carceral, you know, state and weaponized it against us. And the reason is that the Democrats became neoliberals. And I think a lot of people don't understand what that term means. They think that it's a reference to liberal versus conservative, about social policies, and it has nothing to do with that. It's an economic term. So it's not like a new kind of liberal.
Right.
It's
the new kind. It's new liberalism.
Exactly.
Which people don't understand is not the same as being a liberal in a modern context.
Correct. And because what it means essentially is what Reagan said, which was trickle down economics. What it means is the privatization of all essential state functions and the introduction of a private
economies.
Exactly. And so the Democrats went all in on that, and that's why they did NAFTA. That's why they stripped, you know, the working class, you know, and broke the working class. That's why we end up with a Trump, is because, you know, the white working class absolutely did get sold out by the Democrats, and all the Democrats can say is, oh, they're racist. It's like, nah, man, you drove them into the arms of that enemy. And I'll say one thing about this is that a lot of people don't understand that in the 2024 presidential election, in the last two polls, we were getting more voters from Team Red than we were getting from Team Blue. The majority of people that voted for us are people that would have never voted for either party, but we were getting a lot of Republican voters precisely because I'm saying, listen, I said this to a white couple on a flight from Santa Barbara. No, it was from LA to Phoenix. I said, I don't think that your average Trump voter is racist. They had already told me they were Trump voters. They ended the conversation by organizing a Green Party rally in Flagstaff, Arizona. And the dude said, you're going to be the first Muslim president of the United States. But here's how I opened the argument, is I said that, aren't you tired of Democrats calling you racist? I said, I don't think your average Trump voter is any more racist than your average Democrat. I think that that's just a bedtime story that liberals tell themselves to feel better about themselves and look down at you.
Right.
I know Trump's racist. He says racist stuff all the time. And she was like, yeah, that's true. I said, but that still doesn't mean all Trump voters are racist. I said, here's what I think. I said, I think your average Republican voter doesn't see a difference between blue criminals and red criminals, and all other things being equal, would rather pay lower taxes. She was like, yeah, that's basically it.
For them, that's definitely a bar. They'll catch what you're giving there, definitely.
And the reality is if I'm not committed to all of the dependency politics of the Democrats, and I'm not committed to the military adventurism of the Democrats, then I'm not going to waste your tax dollars like that. Like, we can cut your taxes.
Yeah.
And also-
If we don't gotta pay to kill people across the world and subsidize a genocide, we can probably lower some taxes on you.
and there's a lot we can do. And what's more is that I don't have to to stage a fake culture war in order to fearmonger you onto either side of a vote. See, both Team Blue and Team Red have only negative incentives. They have no positive incentives. They don't offer anything, so that they can only ever fearmonger. And they mask the fact that their donor base, like if you were to make a Venn diagram of the donors for the Republican and Democrats, it's basically a single circle.
Yeah.
It's just got like a little sliver,
It's little slivers on the outside. People that really hate trans people over here.
Exactly. And no, literally, it's like, and that's basically it. It's like a hardcore group of like, white evangelical Zionists that really hate trans people on one side, and that like the other,
and like eco-fascists on this side.
And
people that want eugenics and population control.
So then what that means is that they have to have the culture war. It has to be fought in those terms. Whereas the Green Party doesn't care about your culture war. Like, I do not expect all the people that vote for me to share my politics. What I expect is for them to understand that the role of elected officials is to have people who might identify differently, pray differently, love differently, have different visions of politics to be able to express that and to live their truth in the public space without being attacked by the state from either side. Like, it's literally supposed that, like, to me, that's the thing in America that's worth fighting for. It's not the past of America. It's the idea that if you can create representative institutions, it will preserve a form of public life that actually allows plurality to exist in peace.
Right. And the technology that America was built on, it has value despite the frameworks that actually control what that mythology manifests in the world.
And the fact that they ain't never been close to living up to it.
Right. That's what makes it. Yeah. It's the mythology that we aspire to that's then weaponized to excuse insert horrifying thing here in this country. Switch it up real quick because I don't want to go too far over an hour. I want to talk about the influencer nature of what we're doing, especially on the left. YouTube is unique in that, first off, like, YouTube is the only place you can actually make money doing this. No shade to TikTok and Instagram, Facebook, and all those other people. Yeah. But I know from talking to those people and being recruited and courted that there's no money over there. Oh. And that's partly because it's just kind of a bigger mess. So on the good end, you can have a career and like build a body of work on YouTube in a way that you can't elsewhere. The other problem is that it also undergirds stan culture around anyone. Everyone has stans.
Yeah.
But the left doesn't, I don't think people understand that leftist stans exist. I think like the Barbs know they're the Barbs. The Bayhive knows they're the Beehive. Well, they put bees under their comments because they know they're leaving a level of social acceptability in their behavior in support of their favorite creator or their favorite theme.
Yeah.
But I find that the online left is not cognitively aware of how stand-based they are sometimes. And I get it, because we're not standing a celebrity, a singer. We're standing a political point of view. We're standing an ideology. There's way more at risk when somebody has a platform and does something misogynistic or, liberal Zionist or et cetera, et cetera. But I get frustrated because unlike a Beyonce, who's the biggest pop star in the world for the last decade, right? We are, in my opinion, way further behind in terms of like just our saturation of the marketplace of ideas. We see our ideas everywhere. We know that Social Security is literally has social in the name. We know that. We know that public education is a socialist framework and concept. In the health, we know that everybody wants free healthcare. Everybody wants that.
Everybody.
But we have been, for a multitude of reasons, one I think is just the way we're approaching it, unable to illustrate how the things people want are the exact things we're offering And how can we open up those conversations with people? How do we, and maybe this is wrong of me. I've been criticized for saying this, but how do we get motherfuckers to be more normal about these politics and less off-putting? There's a quote that I've been trying to like make happen a lot more from Huey P, where he talks about how he had to learn himself not to be condescending and dismissive to people who haven't learned these things. And I don't think we're engaged with that much because of that stand culture.
He said literally, he said, even when somebody comes with a very bourgeois perspective, I tell people not to talk down to them, but to explain things to them. And Malcolm said, do not be quick to condemn. There was a day when you did not know that which you know today.
Yeah.
And that holier than thou know-it-allism is a major inhibiting factor in, the growth of the left. People will sometimes frame this, especially liberals, frankly, will frame this in terms of purity politics, in order to try to deflect criticism from fake leftists who are actually liberals, the Bernies and the AOCs of the world. But I don't think that's the way to think about it. If you go to my webpage, butchwareforgov.com, at the bottom it says solidarity beyond identity and ideology. I think that it's something that's actually more deeply rooted. I think that a lot of these leftists don't understand that it's not just stands. Yes, they are stands for an ideology, but a lot of this is actually their religious belief and they don't know it. This is their faith. And so there's all of the emotion.
Folks do be quoting Marx like it's a scripture.
They quote Marx like it's scripture, and they always want to send you back to their sacred book. But I go back to mine, and what the Quran says is, never did we send a messenger except in the language of their people. So what that means is that you're not, I can't be saying you need to go read Marx and you need to go get, hip to this, to this lingo. I need to say it in a way that you can understand. That's why that white couple on that flight could hear the message. Literally wanted to get the selfie. I still got that selfie in my phone, because I delivered the message in a way that makes sense for the one that is hearing it. And I think that we have not done that, and we have been reduced infighting. If you're a practicing person of faith, then for sure your faith has traditions and mechanisms of tolerance, because religions know that they move in areas where people are going to believe other than them. One of the problems with Marxists is that Marxists don't know that they're religious. They don't know that they don't know that that's their religion. So they don't have mechanisms of tolerance for dealing with people that believe other than they do. Literally, I was teaching Walter Rodney, Frantz Fanon, Amilcar Cabral in my first Pan-Africanist reading group when I was 19. And I will get smoke from Marxists that say I'm not Marxist enough because my first anti-capitalist heroes were born 200 years before Marx was a glint in his daddy's eye, and they were fighting against the slave trade in West Africa. And I wrote about this in my books, and that their framing had nothing to do with Marx. It had everything to do with their indigenous ancestral traditions. Right. And so that all of that is just to say that as soon as you understand that these are your core beliefs, then you start to think about how to move into space in a different way.
Yeah. I think Touré was one of his talks was like, Marx did not invent socialism. No. He named it, and these things, these frameworks of existence and struggle existed far before him.
And it becomes, and this is let's be blunt about this. This can be especially a problem with the white leftists because it essentially becomes a different version of Eurocentrism. Okay. They're pointing you back to an important European intellectual to shape the way that you engage everything. And a lot of times it is paired with a kind of racial bypassing. They'll say everything is the class struggle.
Right. It's all class. Why are we talking about race?
Why are we talking about race? And the thing is, and Huey dealt with this in Revolutionary Suicide. Huey said that even if you solved capitalism right now, you would still have racism because white supremacy has come to exist independently. And that's also what those third world, Marxists and people like Huey and others, Frantz Fanon, understood, is that, yes, Marx has the most probing and trenchant analysis of European capital and European imperialism, 100%. But you have to know when to argue back with Marx. Like Kwame Ture, for example, He said when Marx and Engels said that religion is the opiate of the masses, that was only true for Europe. He said, if you study the religious and spiritual traditions of different, indigenous communities in Africa and other places, he said, you see the liberation potential in them. And he said, he was speaking at the University of Hawaii at that time. He said, if the people of Hawaii were ever to try to get independence from their oppressors without reference to their ancestral spirituality, they would just run around in circles. So the point is you have to know how to contextualize Marx, and you can benefit and learn, but you need to be more expansive, especially if you're, a thinker of color or an activist of color, as to how to integrate, certain kind of core leftist tenets into your own ancestral traditions, cultural traditions, social traditions. And a lot of that infighting just simply does not allow for that.
Dope. We're at about an hour. Before I let you, promote all your things and talk about where to support you, give the people something to walk away with, high-minded or low-minded, whether it's, check out this new album or, donate to this new function or come to this new event. I got videos coming up that are like so lighthearted. I'm excited. One video coming up, and the last one was and then I'm finally getting to Tyler Perry later this year. Because I've been so long accused of
that one.
Yeah, I've been so long accused of making people depressed at the end of my content, and to me, I guess it's whatever my version of autism is. The shit is fine to me, but I guess I'm already where other people. I'm already where I think I bring other people, and I guess when they get here, they're like, I wasn't ready to be in this space, FD. So I want to try more walking away with the useful tools in things. So what is something that you want to give the people as they've sat here and received from us?
I'll go back to Malcolm. Malcolm said, we are not outnumbered, we are out-organized. That we actually have the capacity to take down the beast, but he then said we have to first defeat a kind of beast within. That's my paraphrase. Here's his exact words. What he said was, never let your enemy tell you how many of you there are. Never let the man that you are against form your opinions for you. I think that there's a lot of defeatism on the so-called left and that kind of internalization of the idea that the empire is invulnerable, can't be defeated. Whereas what I learned from Malcolm's autobiography and from reading the Quran was the same thing. All empires fall, which means that empire is doomed. Its fall is not impossible, it is inevitable. And then that puts us in a space of, well, what are we building upon empire's ashes? It puts us in a build mode rather than a destroy mode, to go with some 5% lingo on the way out. So the last thing that I would say, just to kind of call folks, is that, I learned from Malcolm, posthumously. Kwame Ture learned from him in life. And what Kwame did with a lot of Malcolm's insights on organizing, he kind of crystallized into a core teaching. Revolutionaries don't just mobilize around issues. Revolutionaries organize against systems. Stop pouring your energy into mobilizations around resisting the carceral state, mobilizations around a free Palestine, mobilizations against ICE, and organize for political power that can tear down the system that undergirds all of these. That's why I'm running for office, because I believe that the role of a political party in a revolutionary movement is that it helps channel people's energy from mobilization around issues to organization against systems, to existing in siloed mobilizations where you can be taken out easily, to standing in solidarity and taking down the beast. I know that we're going to win. 5 centuries of white supremacist capitalist empire is over. We just have to do the work.
Dope. Butch, this was dope. It's always good to vibe with a fellow recovering child of Hoteps. Shout out. Well, we went through, let me stop it. Let me not stop. Shout out to everybody watching. Appreciate y'all watching.